Shalom, shalom, everybody. I am going to call our meeting to order, and please allow me to pray. Father, in the name of Jesus, we come before your throne. We thank you, oh God, for the gift of life. We know, oh God, that it is not because we are smart. It is not because we know how to plan. It has got nothing to do with what we have had, that we are awake this morning. We don't take this life for granted, oh God. We know it is because of your grace that we woke up this morning, Lord. So we thank you. We thank you for your generosity to us, Lord. We thank you for your generosity to our families, oh God. We give you the glory and the honor. Now, Lord, I commit this meeting into your hands. I say, Lord, have your way. Guide us, oh God, as we have this discussion, as Dr. Lisse tells us about his journey. Oh God, may something ignite in our hearts. Oh God, may something ignite that makes us not just be inspired in our hearts, but that makes us want to do something to help the next person. Oh God, it is in the name that is above every name, Jesus Christ, that I pray. Amen and amen. Glory. Something inspirational from Lan.
Let's see. Martin Luther King had to say this about bigotry and divisiveness. He said, "We must learn to live together as brothers or perish together as fools." And because service happens to be so exemplified by those here today, and especially by our guest, Dr. Lisse, the next three quotations are about service. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? And that's Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
The most persistent question, what are you doing for others? The next one's Jackson Brown, and he said, earn your success based on service to others, not at the expense of others. I think that exemplifies us, that even if we were seeking riches, we wouldn't want to do it we want to do it by trampling on others. Earn your success on service to others, not at their expense. And the last one is Gandhi. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others.
That's a great quote. I love that.
That's beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. So Dr. Lisse, with our every meeting, we always want to also start with each of us sharing a moment of gratitude, like what are you grateful for today? So I am going to go in the order in which you all appear on my screen. So I'm going to start with you, Miss Mary Jane.
Good morning. I'm so grateful for many things. It's just a beautiful day here. I'm going to mow the lawn. I'm grateful that I can do that. And I'll pass it to someone else.
Lon.
This past Wednesday, Helen and I were both saved from a life of incapacitation or even death. Helen and I were driving on high-speed roadway, and car accidents kill 1% of us. So that's certainly a risky thing we do, even though we do it quite often. And Helen was driving, and the truck ahead of us, a step ladder flew off the back bed of the pickup truck.
Oh, wow.
And came right at us. And Helen managed to avoid having it come through our windshield. And so I'm so grateful that Helen was doing the driving that day.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Something about being close to death that makes you like enjoy the next breath with everything you have.
Yeah, I've decided to be a good person from now on.
I know it's amazing. Like when you hear some of these stories, people start bargaining with God, right? And sometimes you hear people who don't believe in God at all, but in that moment, they begin to bargain with God. Like, God, if you just let me out of this one, seriously, I'll serve you. I'll be good. This is what Lan is doing. I'll be good. Exactly. Dr. Lisse, what are you grateful for today?
What about you, Pastor T? You're next on the list here.
Oh, on my side, you are next.
All right, you want me to go next? All right, so I'm grateful for so much. I mean, nobody's shelling the house next door, that nobody's trying to invade my country. I can get up in the morning and there's peace here and stability and infrastructure and health and opportunities. And I'm very, very blessed. I just wish the rest of the world had the same experience.
Miss Eliane, what are you grateful for today, my dear, right there in Brazil?
Well, as I usually say, I'm very grateful for my life and the lives of my family. I'm very grateful because my little cat is getting better every day. As I told before, he has a kidney disease and he was not very well these days, but he's getting better. I'm very grateful for the beautiful day here in Brazil. It's a sunny day, even though it's winter here. The winter started yesterday or the day before yesterday here. And we have a very beautiful sunny day. It has nothing to do with winter. No, it's much more summer than winter. So I'm very grateful for this too. Thank you.
Praise God. That's a beautiful color on you, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Very nice, very nice. Well, I am grateful for everybody who prayed and everybody who fasted and wrote letters and did whatever they did to impact Roe versus Wade. I am grateful that people can be able to keep those babies alive. It's really, I don't quite, I mean, I get sometimes why some women would choose to have an abortion, but I believe children are a blessing regardless of which way they come into the world. So I'm just grateful for those that prayed and wrote letters and did whatever they needed to do. Dr. Butler, thank you for joining us. What are you grateful for today? Oh, sorry, Eliane?
Just in time, I was going to say that I'm also very grateful for Lon and Helen lives because of the accident.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. We could be having a different meeting today. Yes. Dr. Butler, what are you grateful for today?
Good morning, everyone. God has been good to us, and I'm grateful for life. I just look at the time and I washed back home. I just came from gym, so I said I'll join you. I'm happy to be with you.
Praise God, praise God. I am going to share my screen real quickly for our Rotary minutes, and then I will leave the floor to our guests.
Hi, Milan. It's good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Can you hear it?
Yes.
Oh, good.
No.
No.
You cannot hear me?
We
I
hear
can't hear
you,
him.
but we don't hear him.
Okay. Let me see if I
I guess I could.
I remember I was told how to do sounds. Let's see this one. Let's start over. Let's see if this works. Okay, thank you.
Rotary is all about service above self, And as chair of the service committee, I'm involved in coordinating and really recruiting projects throughout the town of Falmouth and the whole part of the Upper Cape. We're heavily involved in a number of service projects. We'll talk about VIPS, for instance, Volunteer in Public Schools in Falmouth. We're involved in the Pen Pal program, the guest reader program that started. This morning, as a matter of fact, 9 Rotarians were up at the North Falmouth Elementary School helping to redo the gardens there. And this coming Friday, we're going to be at Mullen Hall doing something very similar. Cape Kids Meals is a supplemental food program. The counselors and the principals and teachers in the 4 elementary schools in Falmouth identify children that need additional nutrition. So what we do is we pack the food, and they're able to use it on weekends and also to supplement their food during the week. We deliver anywhere from 60 to 65 bags that get packed. The quarter deck it really helps us out as well. They donate every week both the oranges and apples that we use for all the children. So among the other programs, we have Rotary Club of Falmouth, Volunteers at Spore Gardens. We help with the cleanups there. We help the Falmouth Road Race, the marathon, the triathlons that take place. We have another program starting tomorrow called Happy Hope, which is a program out of Pocasset that they pack kits for children who are hospitalized throughout Massachusetts. In addition, we are involved with the Wounded Warrior program, and historically, the volunteers in the Rotary Club of Falmouth have participated in things such as the gazebo at Goodwill Park. We volunteer to help out at the Falmouth Commodores. Rotary's been here about 90 years in Falmouth, so it's a long-standing institution that's here. We like to volunteer, and one of the things certainly coming out of this that we're interested in is what other projects you might have for us. We're very committed. Tell us what you need and how we can help out, and we love to do that. It is all about service above self, and that's what we're trying to do.
That's our Rotary Minute, and I am going to leave this. Before I do that, I just want to mention Pastor Yvonne in South Africa wanted to join us, but they just lost electricity. So they don't have electricity right now, so she won't be able to join us today. So I'm going to leave the floor to Lan. Lan, if you can please introduce our guest speaker, and then give him the floor.
Certainly. Thank you, Pastor T. Dr. Lisse is preparing for his trip to Poland to help the Ukrainian refugees. He's graciously agreed to take the time to be our speaker today. Dr. Lisse is a retired emergency room doctor. He and his wife live very modestly, and they donate a sizable portion of their time and their money in the service of others, both in their home community and internationally. Because he only has 30 minutes to talk to us, I want to take 5 minutes just to list what he's currently doing in Malawi. Dr. Lisse has accomplished so much, it's hard to believe. Believe it. Now, Dr. Lisse has been leading annual medical missions for decades. A few years ago, Helen and I went with his group of 40 volunteers to Malawi. The volunteers worked constructing school dorms, constructing bathrooms. We delivered 700 moon catchers. We set up about 70 laptops in the various schools. We delivered more seeds for their garden program, carried suitcases. The volunteers in their suitcases all had medical supplies. Half of the volunteers were medical professionals or medical students. 11 were high school students interested in service-related careers. 2 were with the Mooncatcher Project, and 2, Helen and I, were Rotarians. Diarrhea is a serious problem in many the poorest countries. Dr. Lisse's organization is providing chlorinated drinking water for 150,000 people. The cost is $12,000 a year, $12,300. The result is an 80% reduction in waterborne diarrhea diseases. And when Dr. Lisse was in Malawi just a few months ago, they saw 811 patients. Only a handful complained of diarrhea versus typically 1 out of 3. Malaria. Dr. Lisse introduced Artemisia plants that is now being grown in 53 villages. The villagers consume it as a tea, Artemisia tea. In one village, only 3% of the patients tested were positive for malaria. versus prior visits to well over half. This is incredible. And Dr. Lisse points out on his website that WHO and the Malawi government share in the success because they provided malaria nets as well. COVID, Dr. Lisse's organization, Bridges to Malawi, provided $31,600 for the purchase of COVID supplies, from the masks down, starting from the masks all the way to 6 oxygen concentrators. And their supplies their COVID supplies can be credited for saving many lives. Inexpensive baby incubators that started saving lives as soon as they were delivered. 700 Wello, W-E-L-L-O, water wheels made in India. They're for rolling 13 gallons of water instead of carrying water. They built a hydroponic solar-powered greenhouse that grows crops with a fraction of the time, fraction of the land, fraction of the water. Dairy project, providing nutrition. They have 74 Holsteins or Friesian cows with milk production of 12 liters per day, much more milk production than the cows that were indigenous. They've had 20 calves born, and currently 15 cows are pregnant using artificial insemination. The indigenous cows are the zebu cows. So they've started a zebu cow pass-on program, and the farm groups are now thriving with 47 zebus. Magoi rippers, they have 9 of them. It's like a plow, but it does a better job of protecting the land from erosion and soil depletion. The rippers simultaneously make a thin cut in the land and plant the seed instead of turning the soil over. A chicken pass-on program. In just the past year, they donated 790 chickens, helping about 630 people. They installed solar systems for 9 schools. And one of their volunteers is going down soon to spend several weeks there to be working on those, make sure they're all working right. Microloan program. In last year, they gave out 214 loans to groups of 8 to 10 women, and 183 of last year's loans have already been paid back. Climate and bamboo forests in several villages for fuel. Bamboo has proved itself as a great alternative to wood. Harvesting bamboo normally doesn't damage the environment and is more effective than wood from a CO2 standpoint. So they're planting bamboo forests. They're also planting regular forest, reforestation for climate purposes. They've planted 210,000 trees, which have survived in 52 villages. Right now, they're planning to plant 250,000 more. And they're doing it in such a cost-effective manner. It's only 2.5 cents a tree. A $5 donation would pay for 100 trees, including the forest caretaker. They drilled 7 bore wells. They have a land lease program, and last year they enrolled 743 farmers. The average group of 10 farmers receives $140 a year, helps them do better in the good years, and enables them to stay on their land in the bad years. A problem that's just cropped up its head is that people are saying we're facing another famine and we need $10,000 for various immediate survival. And his website is seeking funding for that. 100% of all donations go towards his programs. The Bridges to Malawi staff is voluntary, and they pay for all their travel expenses and all their administrative expenses. And together, when I saw Dr. Lisse last week, we talked about maybe writing a manual for others to follow in Dr. Lisse's footsteps. I know that I would like to learn how to do many of these things. And with that, I introduce you to the awesome Dr. Lisse, Dr. Brian Lisse. Brian?
Thank you. Well, Lon, you just basically did my whole talk for me, so I'm just going to go now. I was trying to figure out what to do. So I do have a PowerPoint, and maybe I'll do that. Some of the numbers that Lon quoted are different from the numbers that are in the PowerPoint, and that's because, the PowerPoint was written a few months ago, and some things have changed between then and now. And the website's not as up to date as it should be, but he just gave you a nice overview of all the things that we're doing.
I've made you a co-host so you can share. If you want to.
Well, here goes. Let's see how it goes. Can you all see that?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Is there a green share screen button on the bottom of the Zoom?
Still not?
Mm-mm.
Let me try again. Go back to where I was.
I just want to say something. First of all, Dr. Lisse, I did not see it was you in that talk. I'm so happy to see you. I have to tell everyone that we have our own bridges to Haiti, thanks to the generosity of Dr. Lisse and his wife. For over a year, Dr. Lisse has supported 3 small programs in Haiti, and it meant so much to us. So thank you so much for all of your support. We have a garden named after you in the city of Port-au-Prince, and it's the Dr. Lisse Jardin de Ville. And we have the program, the health program in Gonaïve that has more than 15 churches. They are coming and they have weekly church support group healthcare. And it meant so much to us, and it means so much to us because those works are continuing. I did not see you. I don't have my glasses on, so I don't even see.
It's okay, Milan. I recognized you. So
Project to Malawi. This is Bridges to Haiti too. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Good to see you.
All right.
Oh,
Can you all,
wonderful.
can you see this now?
We can see your screen. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So this is Precious. And so Lon said, why do you do what you do? Well, the answer to that question is very simple. You know, the world is filled with people who need help. And there are many of us who are blessed with being in the opposite situation. So I'm lucky I was born middle class, raised to become a doctor, became a doctor. It's a profession that I love. And I'm still working in retirement in free clinics and going to go take care of Ukrainian refugees. And I practice medicine when I go to Malawi. And because of the way our society and culture is set up, I'm also blessed, or have been, because I got well compensated for it. So my wife and I are the kind of people where we don't think we need a second house or a bigger house or to drive a BMW. We don't understand any of that behavior, not when there's so much suffering and need in the world. So it's been easy for us.
My kind of people.
It's been easy for us until the stock market started to go down, for us to be able to just give away a large percentage of our income. And, you know, we're committed to continuing to do that. But it all goes to this. A little bit of it went to Haiti, but Milan didn't mention, but we're not giving any more money to Haiti anymore because Peter's needs in Malawi have just increased significantly. So we have to concentrate just on this one thing. The other thing that Lon said was that, you know, when you go about trying to figure out how to do the sorts of stuff that you're about to see, if you're an American and you're trying to make a difference in another country, what you need is a partner there that you can trust, who can carry out the sorts of things that you want to do, and also that you can really relate to. So Peter Manjali, and who runs his own nonprofit there, we're like brothers. We talk every week. My wife flirts shamelessly with him on Skype as we're talking, and he gets me. He gets American humor. We get him, and he has the capacity, because of his own nonprofit, to carry out pretty much everything you're going to see here. So the projects that Lon is talking about, the vast majority of them are undertaken by a joint staff or by just the K2 Tasso people. The way that we work this out is that Peter will come up with an idea and we will hash out whether or not it's doable. And then I find the money, or I'll come up with an idea and we have that same conversation. We try to stay away from the concept that is all too common in development agencies, where the smart Americans come up with this idea that makes no sense at all in the country where they're trying to put it, but they think it's a good idea. So they just go ahead and do it. So to us, everything that we do has to be stamped with approval by Peter and his colleagues, or it doesn't happen. And vice versa. I mean, if he comes up with an idea, at least I have to be able to say to him, I don't have the money, or I do. So the water chlorination thing, when he said 150,000 people for 6 months, I thought he was crazy. And I told him I wasn't Bill Gates, and we didn't have that kind of money, because I was thinking it would be millions of dollars. He originally quoted a price of, I think, 13,500, and actually went up to 20,000, but that's still doable. So having said that, let me launch on Beyond Precious, that's his name, show you a little bit about what Malawi looks like. That's a typical village street. This is why we do it. That's me. So we're a very small nonprofit. We have, I think, 9 or 10 people on the board. I lose track because some of them are active and some aren't. But the vast majority of what gets done, except when we go on the medical mission trip, is me. I'm 98% of this organization during the non-mission trip time. And my wife and I are probably somewhere north of 70% of the revenue that is generated. So as Lon said, every penny we raise goes right to what we do. Everybody works for free. And if there's an administrative cost, which there are, like registering as a nonprofit in Massachusetts, we pay for it. That's a typical church service. I don't know if you have this experience, Pastor T, but you can see that the little kids sometimes have a little trouble staying awake. So for those of you that don't know where Malawi is, follow the black arrow. It's down there in southeastern Africa. That's what the country looks like. It's got 18 million people. It's one of the most densely populated and one of the poorest countries in the world. So we started as a medical mission trip 10 years ago. And after a few years, it became obvious to me that the best way to solve the kinds of problems that people had there, which included the medical problems like malaria, was to try to fix the underlying problems. Because if you get malaria and you're well nourished, you're not likely to die from it. But if you have terrible malnutrition, and you get sick from any kind of disease, it's likely to kill you. So the real problems there, in addition to trying to do something to mitigate the diseases themselves, is to make it so that people have better economic opportunity, more food in their belly, and a chance to raise themselves up from where they are to a different place. And when I'm giving fundraising talks, I mention to people, because we Americans lose track of this, but every one of us has some ancestor story of being a subsistence farmer. For some of us, it might have been a generation ago. For some of us, it might have been 10 generations ago. But all of us have that background, and somewhere, some ancestor broke that cycle by getting educated, by going into the village, by becoming a middle-class person, by figuring out trade, by doing something that just changed the issue. But Malawi, 80% of their population are subsistence farmers. So if the rains fail, they starve. They live on what they grow. So what we're trying to do is to figure out as many conceivable ways as we can to make it possible for these farmers to be able to educate their kids better and also be able to raise themselves up out of poverty, and at least, if nothing else, away from that line of, if the rains fail, we're going to starve. So we started with the medical mission trip, but pretty soon we morphed into a couple of projects, and I now have to list them like this. So I think we have 23 because things have just gotten out of control in terms of what we're doing and how we're doing it. I tell people, if any of you are familiar with American history, if you really want to understand what we're doing and why, think of the Great Depression in America and Franklin Roosevelt and the New Deal. He figured that there were the more projects and the more ways to try to solve the problem, the better. And it was a very effective way, in my opinion, to approach it. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. So we have agricultural projects, we have medical projects, we have water and irrigation projects. We're combating climate change. We have a microcredit bank. I tell people we steal other people's ideas. Kiva doesn't work where we do, so that's why we're the microcredit bank people. Heifer doesn't work where we do, so that's why we're the the animal pass-on people, and so on. We have put laptops in schools, and Lon's been very helpful with that, but it makes no sense to do that in a school that doesn't have electricity. So we solar power the schools as well, and that's an ongoing process. We actually also work on women's empowerment. Women are pretty much a second-class citizen group in Malawi. So we do whatever we can to evolutionarily change that approach, not revolutionarily. So we're not encouraging people to burn bras, but we do bring at least one movie every year when we go on a trip there that shows a powerful woman character that hopefully the audience can relate to. And we actually donate these to the schools in addition to showing them in the school locally where we're working and living. So that's one of our malaria mitigation things. Lon mentioned the COVID. These are oxygen concentrators. This is one of the major reasons why people died from COVID, was just simply lack of oxygen. So we donated 6 of these things to the local hospitals in the area. And we actually encouraged another partner to donate a few more. And I think we had inspired them to do that. And this saved a lot of lives. We also were involved in, helping people make masks, producing PPE, and just public education and outreach, because the whole reason that we know anything about COVID is because our institutions of mass communication were able to do that for us. Well, those don't really exist at the same level in Malawi. So often you have to have healthcare providers go from village to village and say, this is COVID, this is what it means, this is why it's dangerous, and this is what you have to do about it. And they have no hand washing stations, so those had to be made and distributed. We had a Go Pass On program, which we resurrected in December of 2021 because Peter found a village we hadn't donated to. His math and my math are a little different. So he tells me that I didn't take into account that goats actually have to be able to reach puberty before they can reproduce. So he said the number is actually closer to maybe 15 to 20,000 goats as a result of the original 526 that we donated, but they breed like goats. So it turned out to be something very useful. The easiest way to think of this is that Malawi's public education system, in theory, it's free to send your kid to secondary school, but in truth, you have to pay registration fees, you have to pay for uniforms, you have to pay for books. And so if you're a subsistence farmer, that's not going to happen. And so your kid can't get past primary school, which is elementary school, and therefore that's kind of the end of the road for them in terms of their education. One goat equals the ability to finance one kid for 1 year of high school. So once you give it in a pass-on program a goat, and the pass-on program means the firstborn of that goat goes on to the next family for free, all the other goats that get reproduced, and a goat has 2 kids twice a year, those animals you keep. So you can eat them, you can sell them, you can milk them. There are a whole bunch of things that you can do with them that significantly improve your economic status and the chance for you to educate your kids. My colleague, Peter Majali, is a master of photo ops, as you can see. That's him there pointing to a goat and explaining what I've just told you about. So that's why you do it. Goat can yield 10 times its body weight in milk in a year. It can provide a ton of protein for its family with milk. It provides manure. And one of the fun things about doing what we do is all the unintended consequences. It never occurred to us that somebody would rig a cart and have the goat pull the produce from the farm to a much more distant place with a much larger quantity of produce. But when you think about it, obviously that would be something you might want to do. So it turned out to also be helpful for that, and ultimately meat and hides. So our dairy project is probably our biggest player in terms of where our revenue goes. I stole this idea from Heifer, who's doing something similar, and they're 12 years into it now, about 100 miles away in Tanzania. I called Peter and said, I think we should do something like this. He went and sat down with his board. They talked to the local government people, and he came back and said, we absolutely want to do this. And then he sent me a budget proposal for a mere $180,000 in 3 years. And I looked at it and said, are you nuts? We don't have this kind of money. And, but we ultimately agreed to stretch it out. So it became more of a 4-year proposition, but of course there are cost overruns. So it's probably still costing more than that. But Cindy and I just dug deeper into our pockets and we've made it happen. So we built a barn, a milking parlor, we dug a borehole, we solar powered the pump to make sure that the animals have water. And this is to start a demonstration project, but we also established a dairy cooperative with 24 farmers. So we bought, that's the barn. I'm sorry, that's the milking parlor, that's the barn. In 2020, after we built the infrastructure, we bought 30 animals. And as Lon pointed out, the difference between these cows, who are all Malawi bred and born, and the zebus, which are the more locally used ones, is the amount of milk production. So in America, you can get between 30 and 45 liters of milk a day from a Holstein. So if I say the word dairy cow to Americans and they close their eyes, they see these black and white spotted cows. That's what a Holstein is. So they don't quite produce at that level in Malawi. But if you're going from 1 to 2 liters of milk a day to somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 liters of milk a day, it basically increases your income tremendously. So I tell people, if you want to imagine what this would be like, think about somebody knocking on your door and handing you the tools to make it so that your income could be 8 to 10 times what it is today. You have to do the work and make it happen, but this all makes it possible. So this has changed the lives of the farmers that have benefited so far significantly. And it's a pass-on program. So each time an animal gets bred and has a calf, that firstborn goes to some other poor farmer. So as Lon said, we're up to 74 animals now. Our demonstration project has 9. We trained the dairy cooperative farmers in artificial insemination. I'm learning a lot about dairy projects because I didn't know anything about it, but the irony is that my wife grew up on a dairy farm. So I had once told her when we first met that when we retired, I would be happy to buy her a little dairy farm in Massachusetts because of all the romantic stories she told about what it was like to grow up on a dairy farm. And she looked at me and said, "Are you crazy? You got to milk those suckers twice a day. And the first time's at like 5:30 in the morning." So I said, "Oh, well, hire a teenager. We'll get 2 cows. It won't be." Nope, don't want to think about it. So ironically enough, I did buy her a dairy farm. It's just in Malawi.
Right.
So when you're artificially inseminating, there actually is a very high-tech way of doing it that's called bisex semen. So they've found a way to separate the sperm with the Y chromosome from the sperm with the X chromosome. And that way, if you want X's, which means if you're running a dairy project, you just want girls, you don't want guys. They're useless mouths to feed and you can't milk them. You can get up to 95% of the cows that you inseminate to be females as a result of that, the offspring. So that's what we're doing. Our original pass, we just used regular semen, and so we got a 50-50 split. But the 15 cows that are pregnant now are all pregnant by the sex semen. So hopefully we're going to get a lot more girls. So that's an artificial insemination training seminar. And then so that was 2019, 2020. This is 2021. That's how much money we spent. And those were the numbers that we had at that point. So if you do the math there, the per capita income for Malawi has actually dropped a little bit. It's $550 a year. So the average cow produces milk for 300 days a year. And when you do the math and the difference, each farmer's income before the dairy project was about $440 a year based on the 1 to 2 liters of milk that they were getting and selling. From our donated cows, the income's now $3,450.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so my grand vision is that sometime 10 years from now, I'm hoping that, as I tell people, since my wife is from Wisconsin, that this area where we work in Malawi will be the Wisconsin of Malawi. People will know it for its milk production. They're already starting to make yogurt. They want to make ice cream. I want them to make cheese. So I'm hoping it will become sort of the dairy capital of the area. That's what our cows look like in the barn. This is part of the pass-on program where the dairy cooperative farmers are getting animals. That's just details about the project. So the initial target's 180 cows. So we plan to buy another 30 this year and keep on doing it as long as we have the money. And Peter now wants me to buy a yogurt making system and a packaging system. So our original plan for this was to make it so that we would sell the milk to some middleman. Peter wants to eliminate the middleman and become the actual retailer. And when he first started using the word sell, it made me uncomfortable because after all, we've been asking people to give us money to donate things for free. And the idea is to give the milk and the animals away for free. But he pointed out that if you want to make this whole process sustainable, then you have to do something that involves a transfer of money from one hand to another. So our demonstration project will actually continue to give milk away to poor people and dairy products away to poor people, but it also will be selling it to people who can afford it, because that will make it so that they no longer need money from us and it becomes a totally sustainable process. In addition, the government of Malawi and the schools in the area, which are government run, the veterinary schools, are very interested in what we're doing. And so Peter plans to keep this demonstration project and eventually turn it into an agricultural college of some kind, which is fine with me as long as he doesn't keep sucking huge sums of money out of my pocket. So we already mentioned all that. And obviously, if you're putting milk in the bellies of the poor farmers, at the minimum, if you're increasing the milk consumption in each individual family, you are backing them away from malnutrition, because protein malnutrition is a huge problem there. And you're going to make it so that these people are tougher if they do get malaria or a diarrheal illness or anything else that's, that we haven't been able to prevent. So my ultimate goal is to do what Heifer's doing in Tanzania. There, they convinced the government to actually provide free milk in the primary schools. So they worked out a deal between the government and the farmers cooperative, where the government promised a steady market where the milk would always be purchased, and they got a discount on the amount of money that they were spending on the milk. So if we can get the government to do that, when your brain is developing, it hits its peak and needs, in terms of needing to be properly protein nourished, in elementary school years, especially the earliest ones. So those of you that are Americans who have gray hair like me, you might remember that in the schools when we were little kids, there were these pyramid-shaped milk cartons that cost 2 cents, but I think they were also given away for free to kids that couldn't afford it. That's because our government understood that. So if we can make this happen, we can make a huge difference in the growth and development of little kids, and that's really important. Juan mentioned Duello, so this is what you see typically in Malawi anywhere you go, and I'm sure in most developing countries in the world, and it's always the women who get stuck doing it, and they're already grooming this poor little kid who's probably all of 3 or 4 to carry the bucket on her head. And that bucket might have as much as 20 gallons of water in it, and she might be walking miles. So if you replace that with a water wheel that you push, which I've got a picture of somewhere in here, but not apparently right next, then it's a lot easier on everybody. So the land lease program that he mentioned, what we asked to do was to identify the poorest farmers. These are usually sharecropper or tenant farmers. These are people who pay their rent out of the crops that they grow, and then they feed their family with whatever's left over. A $10 a month amount plus $20, which we give them once for purchase of seed and farm tools. We tell the farmers up front, we're only going to do this for a year. The idea being we want to make sure we're not establishing a welfare state. We're just trying to give them the opportunity with the proper tools to be able to raise themselves up to a level where they're not subsistence farmers and where they're not going to lose the land and starve. And this is probably one of our oldest programs. I think it's 7 or 8 years old now. The numbers are off because I confuse people. So when I write it, it's actually only 42 farm families. So when Peter talks about farmers, the farmer is like the specific head of the household. That's how he thinks about it. So that's 42 each year, but each family has about 7 people in it. So when you do the math, it turns out to be a much larger number of people that we're helping. We give them watering cans. It's one of the tools that they get, and seed. So that's the current overall number. So about 640 farm families have benefited, 4,200 people. 80% of these farmers were able to buy their own land as a result of what we were doing, and they were sharecropping before that. 94% of them have graduated from the program because they don't need any help from us anymore. That's exactly what we want to see. So even though we said 100% wouldn't continue after 12 months, we have kept some people on just because they've needed it. It's the medical mission trip. That's my stepdaughter, who's now a nurse practitioner at school. So we think it's really important that we inspire as many Americans in the area that we can reach to what we're doing, not necessarily because we want their money, although I'm always happy to take it, and not necessarily because we want them to come with us, although I'm always happy to take them, but because everybody in this country should understand how lucky they are and how easy those people that are lucky, and how easy it is for them to be able to actually make a difference in the lives of other people who are less fortunate than they are. I think it's really easy for most Americans to say, these problems are overwhelming, I can't do anything about it, and therefore I'm not going to bother. I'll just buy that second yacht or second house instead, or the BMW. And I think part of what I do, and I'm sure part of what all of you do, is that you represent a human face who can look them in the eye and shake their hand and say, no, you're wrong about that. You can make a difference. A dollar can go a really long way in lots of places. You just have to believe, and you have to believe that you can make a difference, and that even if it's a little difference, that little difference can change lives significantly. So we have a high school contest where we live. This says another 18 this year. Well, that was actually the COVID-19 trip that didn't happen. That was the maximum number of high school kids that we were going to bring with us. So the way the contest works is I give a bunch of lectures on medical illnesses, tropical illnesses that you might see in Malawi at a medical school level. And then a week later, my colleague, who is an orthopedist, gives lectures on all things Malawi, so economy and history and politics and things like that. Then we give the kids a multiple choice test, and whoever gets the highest score gets to go for free with us. But we use this as a recruitment tool because the kids that didn't win go home and they talk mom and dad out of the money, and they come along too. So this last year we took 6 kids. Actually, this year we took 6 kids, but we peaked at around 18. And the reason we only had 6 was because COVID sort of lost some of the institutional memory for us. And we've brought a whole bunch of other people with us, as you can see. So it's not just medical people that go, it's people that have lots of different perspectives and who act as really good consultants and help us make sure our programs work well. But the high school kids, to me, they're the high point of it, because they go there and they're seniors and juniors, And so they're right on that cusp between being children and being adults. And when they get near these little kids who are all over the place, especially in the orphanage, you can watch that because they'll pick them up and carry them and parent them without having any parental experience. But they'll also act like they're sibs, and they'll play with them and sing with them and dance with them as if they're children. And the love that spreads back and forth between these groups is probably the best metaphor for why any of us should be doing any of this. It's just so cool to see. 1 minute they're total strangers, and the next minute we're all family. It's hard to get the high school kids to put the kids down, actually, and every one of them wants to pack their suitcases with children and bring them back home to mom and dad. So part of the medical mission trip, obviously, is to work in hospitals. We work in a big city hospital, a little rural hospital, and we also do what are called village outreach clinics, where we go and see everybody in the village who wants to be seen, which is usually everybody. Sometimes we find some pretty significant stuff. Probably the best story from the last outreach clinic was a woman who came in who'd been married for 6 or 7 years, who was sure she was infertile and didn't understand why she hadn't had a period for the last 4 months. So we popped an ultrasound on her uterus, and guess what? She was pregnant. So we really made her day. But we saw some pretty sad things too. So things that needed to be diagnosed and need to be taken care of. Most of our high school kids, just because of the selection bias that we have, are EMTs. So they know how to take blood pressures and things like that. So if they have any medical skills, we put them to work doing things like that. If they don't, we give them the opportunity to learn. But this is an experience that no American high school kid would have otherwise. They're in the hospital standing next to us. They get a chance to see babies born. They get to go in the OR and watch C-sections happen. So it's really a very cool experience. And some of them have gone on to med school, some to nursing school. Some of them said, I never want to see another patient again as long as I live, and they become masters in public health, or they join the Peace Corps. Even though probably all of them are already headed in the directions, those particular directions, I think we give them a little extra oomph to make sure that they know what they want to do, and give them memories that'll last forever, and hopefully make them want to come back and someplace give back. This is a typical village outreach clinic. You can see there are hundreds of people here. The high school kids get stuck outside doing the triage and the vital signs and trying to do crowd control, which can be very frustrating for them, but they step up to it. That's inside a school where we're doing a clinic. There's a newborn. That's just proof that I actually go there. I think I have one picture of me. This is our dairy consultant. So he's a retired Massachusetts dairy farmer who started a cheese business. So he's been very helpful with our dairy project. And I said to him, Dave, you want to come work in a village clinic with us? And he said, I don't know anything about that. I said, have you ever used a stethoscope? Sure, to listen to cows. I said, it's almost the same thing. People just make just slightly different noises when they walk around on 2 feet. So there he is playing doctor. We did not let him prescribe any medications or operate on anybody, though. We always bring a ton of medications and medical supplies with us, which are very helpful there. So that's just, that's not all of it, but that's a lot of it. And we sort it out, and it goes depending on what priorities are needed to different hospitals and Peter's organization, which has clinics that they run. So we gave away 3 handheld ultrasound machines. Each one cost about $2,000. And actually we've given away a 4th now. They're wonderful because usually you have to pay 40 grand for the ones that you see doctors using in emergency departments and hospitals. And there are things that you can't really move around because they're massive. These things you can carry around in your pocket. You hook it up to an iPhone, and they have the capacity to switch back and forth so that you can look at somebody's heart, and then you can push a button and then it'll look at their uterus and so on and so forth. And ultrasound is a continuously evolving field in medicine. Basically, it can replace x-rays in almost any circumstance. So you can diagnose pneumonia and fractures and all kinds of things that you normally need an x-ray for. And most of the hospitals in Malawi, their x-ray departments, if they have them, they don't function because they're high maintenance, they cost a lot of money, hard to get parts. So at least where we work, that's certainly been the case, and the ultrasounds have made a huge difference. So this is a radiology fellow who went with us. He's using a Butterfly IQ right there and looking at that baby. This is a high school student, and she is figuring out, because she didn't know without the ultrasound machine, that woman's pregnant. So Lon mentioned malaria. Our malaria mitigation project involves this plant. The plant's leaves have among 20 different compounds that are anti-malarial. One compound specifically is the go-to drug that is now used for treating malaria worldwide. It's called artesunate. It comes from this plant. So you can grow it anywhere. Actually, I've got some growing in my front yard. And if you drink a tea from it every week, it significantly reduces your chances of getting malaria. If you're really, really sick from malaria and the medication that is being used isn't helping, there are some studies that show that making a concoction out of the plant's leaves actually can save your life. So what I tell people is if you could grow something in your garden that would prevent you from getting the disease that scares you the most, in this country, it would be like cancer. But in Malawi, it's malaria. So I'm sure that our efforts have reduced malaria in the villages where it's being grown. But as Lon said, I don't think we should take major credit. I think the World Health Organization and the nets that have insecticide impregnation to kill the mosquitoes off is probably making the biggest difference there. But there's a difference. I mean, to go to a village that 4 years ago had a 50+% malaria rate is now down to 3%. Somebody somewhere is making a difference. So I'd like to think that we're working with WHO and doing our thing and they're doing theirs. So we planted a bunch of it. We're planting in as many villages as we can. We hope to raise some more money this year to do that. That's what the plants look like. We built a high school girls dorm. We probably won't do another building like this because of all the cost overruns and stuff that was involved in it, but it helped house 90 girls and it will continue into the future who would otherwise have to walk miles to and from school and now they have a place to stay. That's what the predecessor building looked like. That's the construction. That's what the replacement building looks like right now. We donated mattresses to a girls' dorm. That's what it looked like beforehand. I don't have a picture of the mattresses on this talk. I mentioned the microcredit loan and so did Lon. So 670 individual farm families have benefited. That's about 4,690 people. And the average loan is about 25 bucks. The payback rate's 98%. When we started doing this, the way that we went about doing it was we went to a banker who had some experience with this. We told him what we wanted to do. We funded it with just like $1,500. And he was the one who sort of helped us set this all up. And one of the things he said was, here are your rules. Do not, under any circumstances, loan money to males because they'll blow it on girls and booze. So what you want to do is loan only to females, and you want a group of females, not an individual, because women are really tough if they're in a peer group. So if one is trying to bail or not doing what she's supposed to do, the other 6 in that group will push her to do what she has promised to do. And at least so far, he's been right. And the sorts of things that people have done are amazing. This woman built this oven. She set up a little tea shop, and she's done pretty well as a result. We have women that are functioning as middlemen or middle women, so they're actually buying tomatoes and fish and things like that, and they have a little farm store basically out in front of their house. My favorite story, though, is that one of our board members is a Mormon, and they don't drink alcohol. So he was pushing me to get our microcredit loan people to do more than just like sell tomatoes and fish and donuts and act as middlemen. He wanted bigger projects that were more inventive. So he went to Malawi on a trip that was separate from ours, and he came back kind of mortified. And he said, well, I got what I asked for. And I said, well, what are you talking about? He said, I just met a woman who is probably doing the best of all of our microcredit loan beneficiaries. She's making booze and selling it. So I said, well, that's perfect. So we're like the Great Depression with FDR. Well, now we've got Al Capone too. So we actually have 2 women that are doing that, and they're doing quite well. This is a woman that has a store. She's a microcredit loan beneficiary. So again, they all were very poor, not able to put their kids through school. This has made a huge difference in their lives. COVID affected everybody's economy. So people like this especially would be at risk for losing this business. So I made sure that Peter understood that if anybody was in that position, I couldn't think of anything worse than going from being dirt poor to suddenly actually having a chance to do better and then lose it, as opposed to just continuously being dirt poor. So he identified, I think, 23 or 24 out of the total number of beneficiaries who actually were at risk of losing their businesses, and we gave them extra money so that that wouldn't happen to them. Lon mentioned the Cows and Plows program. the government of Malawi decided they announced that they were going to give a tractor to every farmer. And I thought, I don't have any money. This is the craziest thing I've ever heard. And it's such typical stupid development because, okay, let's say they do that. Are they going to give the farmers money for gasoline? No. For spare parts? No. So everybody will have a tractor that doesn't work sitting in their front yard. So the way farmers work right now is they cultivate the land by their backs and a hoe, regardless of how old they are. So they're basically using technology that goes back 1,000 years. Who knows how old it is? So we decided maybe we would try to bring our local farmers into the 19th century instead of into the 20th century by giving them animals that could pull a plow. So these are zebus, but they have the advantage that you can milk them. The Magoye Ripper that Lon mentioned is something that just plows in a straight line instead of in a V. So it's significantly better in terms of of conservation agriculture aspects, and also helps make it so the farmers get a better yield. So they were resistant to the idea at first because they didn't like the idea of plowing that way, but now they got it because their yields are better. So everybody wants one now. So we started out, we donated 32 cows. I think we're up over the 50s now. I think this number is not accurate. And they are shared by farm groups and villages. So a lot of people end up getting a chance to use them. And you can see the difference. You go from a hoe, 5 acres in a day, you can do with a cow and a plow, whereas it would take you between 5 and 6 weeks to do it with your back and a hoe. Lon mentioned the chickens. I think your numbers are off, Lon. I think it's 175 chickens so far, not 790 something, but at any rate, I went a lot. And we're ramping this program up because we've gone to the point where we now have an incubator. And so we are we have our own chickens who are now laying their own eggs rather than us having to purchase them. And that will make it much more easy for us to be able to send more animals out to more people. Reforestation, their numbers are actually higher than Lon mentioned. There are 330,000 trees have been planted and are surviving at this point. And we're hoping to plant another 200,000+ this year. So these were saplings. They were 6 inches tall. Look at how tall they are now. Some of these trees are over 10 feet. And this is in like a year and a half or 2 years. So it's really remarkable. And it's a variety of different kinds of plants. Some of them are indigenous, some of them aren't. Some of them are fruit producers, so oranges and guavas and things like that that farmers can use and supplement their income with. And some of them are more shade givers, but it's really nice to see places that were not forested becoming forested. This is out in the reforestation area in a village. These are the guardians of the forest. So these are the people that volunteered to actually take care of the plants, put them in the ground. They get it. They understand that they're on the front lines of global warming, that if the climate goes south, the rains are going to fail worse, they're going to starve. So they know that just in terms of planting, they can change the microclimate and they'll get the rainfall just locally will be better. He mentioned bamboo. That's just what it looked like before we did anything with it. We planted 3,800 seeds and about 6,000 plants. And I think about 4,000 altogether have survived and they're all thriving. So I mentioned dairy cooperative, and there's the solar power thing. So we're in a total of 10 schools now, actually. We've solar powered 8 of the 10. We just put computers into a primary school for the first time because we think it's only fair that the Malawian kids learn at the same level that our own children are learning. And this is the sort of thing where if you're a poor farm kid, your chance of getting off that farm goes up significantly if you have high-tech 21st century computer skills. So by teaching the kids how to type, and most of these kids have never even seen a computer before, teaching them how to type, how to access the internet and so on. If they want to get off the farm, then they can go down to the city and then they can send money home to help mom and dad because they'll have a better high paying job. If they want to stay on the farm, by accessing the internet, they'll also be able to find out how to do better practices to increase their crop yield. They actually have clubs now that compete in the individual schools with other schools. So it's just come along really well. That's Jen Hardy, our IT person. She's the one, she and her husband are going to spend 6 weeks there around January, upgrading everything and understanding even better what else we can do there. She just hired a Malawian who can code and teach how people how to code. So we might end up with a bunch of software engineers. This could be the Silicon Valley of Malawi. That's the water wheel. That's what it looks like. So I'm going to end with the essential oil idea. So right now, if you're a Malawian farmer, what you do is you grow maize, which is corn. That's how you feed your family, but it has almost no protein in it. So it's not a great way to feed your family, but it fills your belly. So it's like rice, it's like pasta, it's like bread, it's like all those belly filling things that are high in carbohydrates throughout the world. And you grow tobacco, and that's your cash crop. And when Don gives his talk about Malawi, he says that if you use a tobacco product anywhere in the world, odds are very good that up to 25% of whatever you're using in terms of the tobacco was produced in Malawi. So it's one of the biggest tobacco producing countries in the entire world. So being a medical doctor, you can imagine how I feel about supporting that. So what we would like to do is to see if we can get the farmers to switch to a crop that's obviously better for the world, but also better for them and better for the environment. So one of the problems with tobacco is when you harvest it, then you have to cure it before you can sell it to the middleman. Curing it means cutting down trees and smoking it. So there's a lot of deforestation that's happening specifically because of that one crop. So we want people to think about planting lavender. That's the thing that we're concentrating on right now. So to do the math real fast, if you have an acre of land planted in Malawi, you will get about 860 kilograms of tobacco, and you will get $1.50 for each kilogram of tobacco that you sell. If you replace that with lavender in the second year, because the first year it's only 500 kilograms, but the second year you get 2,000 kilograms of lavender, and you can sell that for about $10 a kilogram, and you don't have to cut any trees down. So because farmers are conservative, we have to convince them of this. So we're going to start a demonstration project there. And we may actually even go so far as to start distilling the lavender into essential oils right there and then. So you go around the United States, buy soap, shampoo, whatever, you're going to see lavender scented stuff everywhere. There are middle-class people and upper-class people in Malawi who will buy it. So we're hoping that we can actually easily tap into a market just right there. But places like Whole Foods and other organizations in America that buy these things also are looking for more and more sources of it. So this is all a work in progress. But we have seen lavender plants growing there. They grow very well. They're a perennial, which makes life even easier because they don't have to be replanted every year. So if you've ever seen pictures of Aix-en-Provence with the fields and fields of lavender that grow in the south of France, we're kind of hoping that someday at the Kasunguis district of Malawi where we work will look like that. And that again, we'll find one more way to make the farmers more well off. So I'll close with that. And if anybody has any questions, feel free.
Wow, Dr. Lisse, that was powerful, powerful. Thank you so much. I could see Lance's eyes popping when you started talking about the environment and those forest warriors you showed, because he's passionate about that. Definitely, anyone who has questions for Dr. Lisse, please go ahead and ask. I know we are past our time, so
Sorry.
If you feel you need, that's okay, Dr. Lisse. I didn't want to interrupt you because I think this is important for us. And for those of you who want to be excused, by all means, please go ahead. We'll share the recording, but we'll open the floor for questions. Questions, comments?
I'm wondering if, Dr. Lisse, you and if your team have considered to put a model of development booklet so that we can distribute with those other people who are working, because it's so comprehensive, it's so all-encompassing, and people who used to have less than $500 as annual income are making like 8 times more with some of those interventions. It seems to me that a booklet and some of those technical skills that we could pass on to our farmers to inseminate animals I think we need a development model. And I would like to see that done, perhaps even in Creole, for Haiti, in different languages, that we can take that tool and utilize some of that and replicate some of those wonderful stuff that you're doing in Malawi. It's
Oh,
just
well,
amazing. Thank you so much for your
I-
work there.
Thank you, Milan. I think that's a wonderful idea. Now let me give you the buts. So it took me, we went to Malawi on a medical mission trip on the 12th of April and came back on the 24th. I just finished writing the trip report 2 days ago, and I still haven't picked out the pictures to go with it. So I hate writing. It takes me a very long time to do it. And I know how Winston Churchill produced all those books. He had 4 secretaries. So if you guys want to find me, Milan, if you want to find me a secretary who will walk around behind me and I'll just talk, we can do this. But
We
if I
have a
have to
lot
sit
of
down and do it,
students
it's
who
not going to
could
happen.
fulfill that role, definitely. We'll look into that.
Okay, because I think it's a great idea, but I'm just too busy. Peter and I both have the same problem. We're too busy doing stuff to actually sit down and write about it. And I think that's going to be a long time before I'm going to be in a position where I have the time to do it, much as I'd like to. But it's a great idea.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Dr. Butler. When we started the Heartbeat E-Club, that was one of the things that we said we wanted to do. So we have been collecting some of this information between Lan and I. We've been collecting some of this information to put into a workbook, because we really do believe that most of the work that people are doing can be duplicated elsewhere. But a lot of times people don't know the how. They may get the money, they may have the resources, like in terms of human resources, and even the money, but how? Where do I go? Okay, now I have the $100. Where do I go from here? So I'm glad that Dr. Butler, you mentioned that, but that's something that the Heartbeat E-Club is working towards. So we will be bugging you, Dr. Lisse, definitely.
You'll be bugging me. Great.
We will be bugging you.
I'm learning Ukrainian right now. I don't have time to be bugged
And
by him.
behind every strong, great man, there is a strong woman. His wife, Cindy, is very quiet and she is doing miracles with him. I know.
She has even less
Great.
time to write stuff and less inclination. So she's too busy. She's probably running up to, she's at the food pantry right now and she'll be running up to Target after that to get stuff to give to the Afghan refugee woman who's coming later today. And that's a typical day for us. So
that's okay. We will find a way to do it. We'll find a way to just get the information from you. So
okay,
we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Anyone who has questions, comments? I was writing notes, so but I also wanted to pay attention, but I also was writing notes. But
I'm a fast talker. I'm sorry.
No, you were great. You were absolutely great. It's just that I believe in not taking, but because I learned it 3 times, right? I'm hearing it and then I read it and then I recite it to myself.
Me too.
So
That's how I got through med school.
Great. So number one, I wanted to know, will you be able to share with us your PowerPoint?
I have no idea how to do that, but if somebody can talk me through it, the answer is yes.
Okay, all right. I'll call you after this and then or send you some instructions in email.
That would be good.
Okay. And then I really like that some of your projects, I'm sure, I don't know if all of them, but you had some projects that you mentioned which had a sustainability plan. And that's one thing that we at the E-Club, we want to be involved or to have a sustainability plan. This whole, and take away this whole idea of Muzungu is going to bring some money for us and then we are going to run with it. We really want to encourage people from always waiting for a handout, but
Right.
to have something that is sustainable, that they can take reins for it. And I like how you are involving the locals, because at the end of the day, you come back home.
Yes,
So
you're
having
absolutely right.
locals-
Sustainability is the key to all of this.
Yes. So I really appreciated that. And that's Dr. Butler, the thing you mentioned about the income just going sky high. I know that when you're looking at it from us who are here in the US and you are looking at $3,000 a year and you're boasting about that, but from their perspective, that is really, really a lot of money. I mean, it's more than the highest paid civil servant in Zimbabwe. So $288 per month is higher than the highest civil servant in Zimbabwe right now.
I know.
And these are farmers. So just putting all that into perspective, for me, I was just like, oh my God, this is just, yeah. We are going to be bugging you, Dr. Lisse.
One thing that we are trying to do is really putting prayers in action in Haiti, because everybody has a church, everybody's praying. And if we could have small groups of people doing some of those things, like we do the prayer and then we go to work, do the prayers, get the work done. I think, oh my goodness, I feel like I can't work without getting those church in line to just go and plant. And we wanted to do much more than the little gardens that we have in town, with some of the seeds and the flowers and the vegetables. There is work to be done, and it's a wonderful journey to be able to get those things done. Now, documenting those things is another work, so I'm not good at that.
Dr. Lisse, when you take the students on the trips, where do they sleep? I know it sounds like such a mediocre question, but yeah.
Oh no,
I'm
that's a
curious.
very. I mean, you know, the moms have lots of questions. It's usually the moms about, you know, where are they going to sleep in. So when there's a British NGO that built the hospital that we work out of, and when they built it, they built what's called the Anglican compound. So they're working in tandem with the Anglican Archdiocese in the area. So this compound includes an orphanage, a primary school, a secondary school, church, and the hospital, and also these basically like a little suburban development. So a bunch of houses, some of which are subdivided in two, where the people who work in the hospital live. So if you can imagine a community where the janitor and the electrician and the hospital CEO and the doctor and the nurse all live side by side in houses that are on the same street, that's exactly what this is like. So, so they do have, when Malawi has electricity, they have electricity, but there's a roof over their head. These individual families will host 2 or 3 or 4 high school kids and or other members of our team. They provide the food. So we pay for, it's like 9 British pounds a day, it's $13. But they make traditional Malawian food. The water supply, when it's working, is chlorinated, so it's safe to drink. So it's not exactly a living out in the countryside in the farm experience, which is something we did in our Nicaragua days, and more like what I'd like to have my high school kids experience. But Peter doesn't think that's safe. So safe is an operative word here, and it's also easier for us because everybody's in the same area. So when we're going out on a project, it's easy to round everybody up. It's easy to communicate, and that helps a lot.
Brian, Larry wanted to come and say hello to you, but Sherry, you want to say?
Oh, yeah, I don't want to interrupt you all.
Yes, I know.
Good.
Hey, Larry, how you doing?
Hi, Brian. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Long time.
I mean, to interrupt
COVID's messed up everything social, so I'm sorry we haven't seen each other, but
No, that's okay. That's okay.
you guys look good though.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You too.
Thanks.
I
So Pastor T, one more thing I
Yes.
forgot to mention that isn't on that PowerPoint. Peter's latest project, which seems to be equally successful, is beekeeping. So that's also something that Heifer pushes. It cost us, we have 42 beneficiaries. It cost us about $100 a person to get them suits and hives. They're now on their second harvest. They're averaging about 12 kilograms of honey per farmer per harvest. And that works out to be something, when you do the pricing, to be like $240 to $300 a year. And I think one of the advantages to the bees is that they're probably much more drought resistant than anything else that we're doing. As long as there are some flowers somewhere, they're probably still going to produce honey. So it's just one more way that the farmers can have of putting money in their pocket and giving them the tools and making them do the work, but making it sustainable. So we're going to ramp that up too, if and when we have the money for it.
For the beekeeping, do they need special training to how
Thanks,
to
Elaine.
Yes,
handle
but it's
this?
just, it's like a 3-day,
Yeah.
it's a very short live training. And Peter said there are 180 people, some of whom are keeping bees, who would like us to help them just with more stuff. But most of them have just heard the word and they're really interested in this. So this is a project where there's a lot more interest probably than anything else that we've done. Maybe because it's less work and more income. But we'll be ramping that up over the next couple of years.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, great. My dad would love that because he did beekeeping training some time back, and he always wanted to start it, but he's up in his age. So now
it's a little old.
he just talks about it. Yes. Oh, wow.
What would keep more people from doing the bee? Because it seems to me that there is relatively less income involved to getting it started. And it could bring so much back into selling honey and that kind of thing. Why is it not more use? I mean.
Well, I imagine the barriers, which don't seem to be an issue with us, but that's because of who Peter is. You have to have somebody that has the knowledge to be able to teach it and the wherewithal to teach it. And you have to have access to bees and then, the equipment. So if all that's there in Haiti where you're trying to work, then it shouldn't be very difficult to make happen. Then it's just about money. Okay. But you need those three things.
And I think also the know-how. I mean, I'm sure people have been keeping bees from time immemorial.
Forever. Yeah.
The know-how, I don't think is an issue. I also think that the marketing piece also, where do you sell this to whom? So I think sometimes people we forget that not everybody has the access to the buyer of a local supermarket. Yeah.
Well, so Peter mentioned to us that at least in Malawi, people do like to sweeten things, and they would much rather use honey than refined sugar for lots of reasons. Part of it's just a cultural thing, but part of it's the cost and the availability of it. So the market part doesn't seem to be an issue for him and for our project. But that could be very different in a place like Haiti where everybody's got sugar cane.
Okay. And then my last question / comment is on solar, the solar systems that you have put in schools. I would love to hear more about that. I know we don't have much time, but can you just touch on a little bit on how you kind of got that started?
So that's been a really interesting evolutionary process. So basically what we said to Peter was, we would like to donate laptops. We realize that this is not going to work out unless you have an electricity source. We would like to see the entire world solar powered and everybody stop, using oil and gasoline. And so as a place to start in these villages where there's no electricity, what can we do? So he found a solar expert, and I'll put that in quotes. And that person said it'll cost about $1,000 per school to put up 1 or 2 solar panels, put the inverter and the batteries in, and generate electricity. And when I say evolutionary, it turned out that underpowered all of the schools, that the choices of batteries and inverters and things like that turned out to be, they weren't the best quality. And so we've had to replace them and upgrade our systems much more frequently than I think we should have needed to. But this is a learning process. And so, we're all slowly but surely understanding more and more about what's involved. They're all working, but they don't work to the capacity we would like them to work. But having said that, the flip side of it is, even just forgetting about the laptops, we were told that the little kids at the primary school and some of the students at the secondary school now can go to the school at night because there's electricity and there are light bulbs, and they can study there. And that has significantly improved their ability to, to pass tests, and their scores are higher. And so there are all these consequences that we didn't really think about because we were just concentrating on the solar powering part of it with the laptops. There is something called Solar Mamas, which I'll bet Lon knows about, that our groups are talking about, where there's a modular system that's like in a container that you can purchase, and I have no idea how much they cost. And every time I ask, I never get an answer, which makes me think they're very expensive. But these are women in Malawi who went to India and were trained there to learn about solar and how to set it up in villages and make it happen. There are multiple videos that you can find online that are really heartening, because it sounds like, you know, doing solar is not expensive anymore, and you can do major things in villages without costing a lot of money, and things that probably work really well. It's just a question of getting your hands on the right stuff. And people keep using the phrase Chinese knockoffs, so I think that may be part of our problem with some of the stuff that we've got.
Okay.
My goodness.
It's a work in
Thank
progress,
you
but it's working.
Oh,
much.
yes,
Thank you so
yes.
much. I'm so glad I
Thank you
came,
so much.
because I was going to take 2 classes this morning, and I said, no, I have to come, because Pastor T said, it's so discouraging that we have so many people in the big club, and then we don't have people. I said, okay, I'm going to take 1 class and then wash to go. And then it's you're here. I'm so glad. I thank God for that, because I would have really hate to miss your presentation today. And I'm really happy that I came to this meeting. So,
Oh, it's good to see you too. So I'm glad you came. That's awesome.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Oh, so let me see. 4-way tests.
Before we do the 4-way test, Pastor
mhm.
T, I would like to have a better sense of what you would like to do with assigning different people tasks, because I know that they will be interested, but we may need to reach one-on-one to connect with people to see if they will do one of the teams, so we can stay engaged and being on the same wavelength. I don't know how you want to go about that. So it's been, we would say, roughly 3 weeks since we are working on that. I have about 3 people who signed. 3, would you say, Lon? How many?
Yes, I think 3, you and I and Pastor T.
No, there is one more. I forwarded
Okay.
that to you this
Okay,
morning,
4.
yesterday. So we all together we have 4. You and Pastor T and you wanted to do everything, so that's fine. But I recommend for you to sign anyway on 1 or 2 things to just keep those teams going, if you want to do that, of
I
course.
think I did. Pastor T, did you disable screen sharing?
Yes.
It says host disabled screen sharing.
I see it. She's got the 4-way test up there.
Oh,
Oh, does it? Okay,
Yeah.
good. So of the things we think, say, or do as we go about our week, we ask ourselves, is it the truth?
is it the truth?
Is it fair to all
Fair to all
concerned?
concerned.
Consent?
Will it
Will it
Build
build goodwill and better
goodwill and better
friendships?
friendships.
And better friendships?
Will it be
Will it be
beneficial to
beneficial
all
Will be
to all
concerned?
beneficial
concerned?
to all consents. And Lan always wants to add, will it be fun?
Yes. Well, that's who Lon is.
Well, it'll be joyful and rewarding. no
Yeah,
doubt
not
about that.
just being involved in something that's boring.
That's right.
Okay, so our meeting is adjourned. Once again, thank you so much, Dr. Lisse, for taking the time. We know you are busy, and we were overextending, asking you to come every 2 weeks. And
Yeah. Unfortunately, that I can't do that. Not anytime soon, anyway. But I appreciate the offer.
but we appreciate you. And whenever you're in town, please let us know. So, or whenever you have some time, let us know so we can again have you come back.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Take
what
care.
a pleasure to meet
Good
you,
to
sir.
see you.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Bye-bye,
All right.
everybody.
Bye-bye.